Hello, everyone. As I come on and I'm distracted by all the notifications, it's so funny. Hello, Joshua. I see you. I'm so glad you're here. Um, this whole technology thing. I'm trying to get my act together. I was reflecting, that you may not know this because I've been pretty active on social media lately, last year or so. But I'm going to say I actually had a phobia, as public as I am, and I'm in front of groups and all that kind of thing. I actually had a bit of a phobia about being on camera. And for some reason, and some of you know that my history as a model, I wasn't, still cameras didn't bother me, but video or motion picture or TV cameras just would freak me out. And so back in the day, I remember when I first started practicing here in Las Vegas, as a local therapist and a clinician, I got asked to start going on the news, and I was scared. And I remember, and this goes back to many of us are teachers, and many of us have skills, and many of us know a lot of things. And I too forget what I teach, and I too don't necessarily apply all the tools that I teach. And I'm great about telling you guys about what to do about certain things, clinically or whatever. And I just remember I was here at Heads Up. I'm at the clinic today, and I one of my colleagues who had been on TV quite a lot, a marriage and family therapist, a very well-known marriage and family therapist here locally, wanted me to partner with her to do a more of a couples thing, matchmaking, dating, for the 21st century kind of thing on TV on a news show that we were invited to go on. And I was really scared. And she just looked at me and she shook her head. Now, remember, by this time, PhD in clinical hypnotherapy, helping people change their lives, quit smoking, lose weight, do all this kind of thing. And she just looked at me and the way that only somebody like that could, she goes, "Don't you teach people to overcome stuff?" And it was very humbling. And what I did was I was, I mean, it was all good fun. We were good friends and good colleagues. And I created a script for fear of video cameras or fear of being on TV or something like that, and I made a recording and I listened to it. And a couple weeks later, we went on local television here. It was a local Channel 5 news station here, and did a great job. And in spite of myself, I thought that I looked really nervous. I thought that I looked, but you know how that goes. You think you're nervous, you think you look terrible, and you're not objective about yourself. And so since then, I've been on TV hundreds of times, and now I'm doing this every week, and I'm recording videos like crazy. So clearly, I have overcome. And I was reflecting on just overcoming some of the things that I've done. One of the things I want to talk about today, you notice the title. um, I think one of the hardest things in life to do is to let go of those relationships that no longer serve us. And we are raised in families, we acquire friends. And for some of us, we have lots of people, lots of constituents, lots of colleagues and clients and patients and friends and family and all that sort of thing. And so today I want to talk about several qualities. Now, I'm not your daddy. I am not in the business of giving advice, but I do today want to talk about the 7 types of people who you should probably get away from or stay away from. Now, none of this is rocket science, but I know that as I was coming up in the last good many years, I'm a people pleaser. I'm a public servant. I like people to be happy. I want people. I mean, I was thinking about that this morning on my walk. I was thinking, love people, got to get away from people. Spent a day yesterday in court. Needed to kind of be alone last night. I won't go into the reason for the court, but I was testifying in court yesterday, or in a situation, and it went well. But it was tiring, to be on the stand, in the hot seat. And so we love people, and you've heard me talk about our basic needs, that although we have a need for people, a need for socialization, a need to have love and belonging, we also have a need for freedom. And sometimes our need for love and belonging and our need for freedom kind of are opposites. And so I have advocated for years that you have a balance of your alone time. And again, some of you are extroverts, you recharge with people. Some of us are introverts. I am an introvert. That surprises many people. And the definition of introversion and extroversion according to Myers-Briggs is, how do you recharge? Do you recharge in large groups? Do you recharge with a lot of people? Do you recharge alone? And I very much recharge alone. Although I love people, I work with people, totally okay. Now, what I've discovered over the years is that there are karmic patterns that we have in our lives. And as we get older, probably in our late 30s, early 40s, we start to identify some of those patterns. And if you've ever known anyone who has dated the same person in different bodies, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean. They think it's this new relationship. They think it's just the greatest thing since sliced bread. You see, you're their friend, and you see absolutely that it's the same type of person. Whether it's the same type physically or not really doesn't matter, but you notice that the same issues or qualities that they had with their previous relationships, they're all of a sudden having. Now, we all know that it takes about 6 months for the honeymoon to be over. And so when I'm counseling people in new relationships or I'm doing couples counseling, I always just say, give it a good 6 months. Don't rush to any judgment about a particular person or relationship unless you've been with them for 6 months. Now, I do not mean live with them. I just mean if you're in a new relationship, give it some time, because lots of studies out there with Gottman and others that says, you're going to project, you don't know them well enough to know them well enough. And so you're going to be projecting all your stuff onto them for the first 6 months anyway. And then at the 6 month mark, and again, it's rough. You're going to start realizing, who you like and all that sort of thing. So that's the topic today. But I do want to talk about relationships in general. And then I mean not just romantic relationships, but I want to talk about 7 qualities or attributes of people that are not so supportive. They're not so healthy. And as I've come up, I have distanced myself from people. Now, many of us are confrontation averse. We are conflict averse. As I go through these 7, please do not think that this means there has to be a knockdown drag out, that there has to be a come to Jesus conversation, or for those of you that study with me in the leadership realm, a purposeful conversation with bullet points about everything they've done to wrong you. Not at all. And if I look at the history of people that I have just sort of pulled away from, some of them in my family, there was never a fight. There was never a confrontation. It was just, I just don't really want to be with them anymore. And I have taken some stands with some of them, and some of them have just drifted away. This is not part of the 7, but I want you, as we go through today's talk, I want you to understand and look at how much of the work in the relationship are you doing. So one of the first things that I look for, again, not part of the 7, is, my question is, if I stopped calling them, if I stopped contacting them, if I stopped reaching out to them, would I ever see them again? I think that's a really important question. And what I noticed in my family, that if I wanted to have a relationship with, and I'm not going to go into the details of the specific people, but I know that there were many people in my family that if I didn't push it, if I didn't force the issue, that I would just never see them. They would never reach out to me. They would never call me unless they needed something. So and again, I'm not even getting into the outline yet. The other thing is there reciprocity? So these are overarching relationship things. Is there reciprocity in the relationship, or do you find yourself doing all the work, doing all the heavy lifting? Or do they only reach out when they need something? They need to borrow money. You have a truck and they're moving, and all of a sudden you're the most attractive person in the world because you have a truck and they're moving, like that. And again, I'm not trying to be petty or flippant about it, but I want you to start, if you're watching this, I want you to start paying attention to the qualities of your relationships. Now, that this doesn't mean you're having romance with everybody, your best friend or family or anything else, but relationships are meant to be give and take. And if you're doing all the giving and you find that you're not getting anything in return, and particularly if you're harboring resentment, then it's something to pay attention to. If you start to kind of think of, well, geez, I've noticed this person, if I don't reach out to them, I just won't. I know that I won't ever see them again. And so let's get into it. The first type of person that you may choose to not continue with are those who criticize your dreams. Now, we want people around us that are supportive of us, not necessarily in our delusions. You know, do you have friends or family members or colleagues or people close to you who will tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? That's okay. I think it's good. I think we don't want yes people around us all the time. We don't want people to be criticized, to be just going along with our harebrained ideas. On the flip side is that we may have dreams for actualizing something that we can't actually see yet. And and I'm going to use my mother as an example. You've heard me talk about my mother, and I do work with a lot of parents. And now I'm in the people business, so I've seen lots of patterns and trends and themes in human behavior. And there are parents in various cultures that I've heard that are very dictatorial about what a child should do, meaning very not even so much giving advice, but you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a nurse, you're going to be an attorney, you're going to be a this or a that, and that the parents are extremely um, I don't know what the other word to say, dictatorial or demanding about the child. Now, my mother, and you have to understand, I've done other videos about my career trajectory. I really wanted to be a medical doctor when I was young, right? I wanted to be a real doctor, not a witch doctor. I really wanted to be um, thank you, Josh. The authoritative, this thing. I mean, and the joke in the Filipino culture is that if you're Filipino, you're going to be a nurse. Apparently, I don't know that to be true, but I hear that from my Filipino, and that I've worked with a lot of nurses, certainly in hospitals, and a lot of physicians, and attorneys, by the way, and where I they come to me for therapy, and they say I'm just miserable in my career. I'm really unhappy, and I said, well, why? They said, well, because me being a doctor was my parents' dream. It wasn't my dream. Being an attorney was my parents' dream or my mom's dream. It wasn't mine. Me being a nurse and coming from the Philippines wasn't my idea. It was a way for me to get a job and make money. And now here I am, 10 years in or 15 years in, and I'm just miserable. I hate it. I never wanted to be a nurse, or I never wanted to be a doctor. I never wanted to be an engineer, or whatever the position is. And one of my former colleagues actually was asked. He's Filipino, and he was asked, what kind of an engineer are you going to be? That was the choice. That certainly engineering was going to be the thing, and the choice was, electrical, chemical, mechanical, that kind of thing. And so maybe not the dream. So the first category, I'm going to put them in the chat here. The title of this is people you should get away from. And the first one is people, let me just get the wordage, who criticize your dreams. So that's number one. Now, my mother, getting back to her, I wanted to be a lot of things. Um, we were poor. I wanted to play piano when I was in third grade or fourth grade, and we couldn't afford it. I told you that story. I wanted to then play the flute, and my brother said, you'll be killed. You won't make it to high school if you play the flute, given the gay connotation of maybe a boy would be too feminine. But this was the '60s, by playing the flute, and they were steering me into trombone, tuba. I was a big kid, and we settled on clarinet. And again, it was fine. Um, People who criticize your dreams don't have your best interests at heart. And so always look at, do they really care about you? Now, sometimes our dreams, until they've been actualized, can seem pretty pie in the sky, that kind of thing. And if you look at any of the media, one of my favorite recent stars is Timothy Chalamet. Timothy Chalamet was, he was raised in New York, poor, and went to high school for the performing arts and really wanted to be an actor. Now, if you know Timothy Chalamet, he's a very small man. He's not a man. And if you've seen any of his works, now I have not seen the Bob Dylan biopic. I really want to see that. I hear it's really good, that he does a really good job about it. But if you've seen Dune, if you've seen Call Me by Your Name, if you've seen, there's several out there that Timothy Chalamet is in. He's maybe the least likely candidate, but he knew what he wanted and he followed it. And I would imagine along the way, I don't know, I haven't heard him say it, but there were a lot of people along the way that said, dude, you're not really the leading man type. Because think about it, this is a small, diminutive young man, and I did see him interviewed on, I think, the Graham Norton show, and he showed some pictures of him at various ages, and he invariably always looked 7 to 10 years younger than he was. So when he was 12, he looked 7. When he was 20, he looked 12. And I don't know how old he is. I think he's in his 30s now, or late 20s, or late 30s, or something. But he looks very, very young. And if you've seen him act, absolutely amazing, his ability, his acting abilities. And so anyway, he's an example of, I would imagine that he got some pushback that wasn't exactly the leading man type. From my own experience with modeling, if you know anything about modeling or acting, 98% rejection. You've got to be able to handle some sincere rejection if you want to be a model or an actor. And from my point of view, I was obese as a child, and then I got to be very slim and very fit. And then in my early 20s, I was actually a model. And, one out of every 20 jobs, every or 20 auditions, you go to 20, 30 auditions, maybe you get one. And sorry, but here I go. Um, you're too tall, you're too thin, you're too fat. Now, in Europe, they don't make good distinctions about, they don't really care. And in Asia, they don't care. You're fat. You're just fat. Uh, at 180 pounds, I was just obese at 6'3", just crazy stuff. So you're too tall, too thin, too short, too dark, too light, too brown, too white, too something, not enough something else. And that is the nature of the beast with modeling and acting. And so it really is kind of the luck of the draw. And my mother always supported my dreams, even if she didn't understand them. So I wanted to play piano. We couldn't afford it. I wanted to play clarinet. She could afford that, so I got a clarinet. Um, in middle school, it was junior high is what it was called then. I really wanted to be a medical doctor, and she just thought, well, yeah, that would be great. And then I took 10th grade biology, and of course, had to dissect a frog, and that was the end of my medical career. I was just not going to be cutting into things. I was not going to be dissecting things. I was not going to be handling blood. And so I think it was ninth or 10th grade, it was medical doctor. Then I think it was, I wanted to be an attorney. So then I joined the debate team, speech team, and I did debate and speech in 11th grade, and did pretty well at that. And then I ended up talking to some attorneys who said that their lives were pretty miserable, and they kind of talked me out of it. And then I wanted to be a musician. And I'll never forget it when I came home one day with my clarinet, and I was doing well in band, and I was first chair or whatever I was. And my mom said, "Well, how's school today?" I said, "Well, Mom, I made a decision. I've decided to major in music in college." And she, with her cigarette and her bourbon, which she had never, there's no pictures of my mother without a cigarette, at least a cigarette and a drink, either in her hand or next to her. She says, "Well, honey, you're going to starve." She says, "I love you. You can do and be anything that you want. And if you really want to be a musician," I was in show business. I was a singer. I worked with a lot of musicians. "You're going to starve to death, but I will love you and support you no matter what." And she did. Absolutely. And then, of course, the story. I was a musician. I did major in music. And then I started modeling, and I came home and to say, well, like, gee, I got this opportunity to go to Chicago at the time and model for Sears catalog. And she was like, "Well, that's really great." And so she never criticized my dreams. And so there's a fine line there. I know you want your parents to be realistic. And then there's a point at which you need to have friends and family that support you. And even though they may give you some objective reality checks, to support and love you for the dreams that you have. So that's number one. So you want to stay away from people that criticize your dreams. Number two, those who ask you to compromise your values. Those who ask you to compromise your values. Now, the values that we have are usually single words for things that we hold dear, things like honesty, integrity, loyalty, respect. And they're also the things that most piss us off when we perceive them to be violated. If you have a core value for accountability and people don't show up, you have a core value for respect and someone is overtly disrespectful, and so on. I think we've had conversations about this. And so I remember my oldest daughter, and she might see this. Her real name is not Indy Lee, but we're going to call her Indy Lee. She has a cosmetic brand. She, I'll never forget it. I was in New York City. She had left a job in New York City and went to another job in New York City, and it was her first day. And she was and I guess I've already outed her, and I think she doesn't really care, but this is many years ago, and I was in New York City, she was in New York City, and she got to the new job, and it was a recruiting firm. I think it was an executive search or recruiting firm, and she got there, and she called me at the first break, and she said, um, "I don't know how well this is going to go. Who I'm watching do these interviews is basically lying to the applicants, saying that there are jobs available when there are in fact no jobs available." So then, I asked her what she wanted to do, and she says, "Well, I know I have to confront it." So then she calls me at lunch, and I don't get the history right. So, Indy, if you're watching this, forgive me, but I just recall her saying, "Yeah, I pretty much walked out." Because they basically said, "Okay, now it's your turn to do an interview, and you're going to say the following, even though the following is a complete bold-faced lie." Now, they didn't couch it in those terms. They basically said, "You are going to try to recruit these people to pay the fees, even though there are no jobs available, there are no likelihood that they're ever going to get a job, blah, blah, blah. You need to just lie." And I think, from what I remember of the story, she was told to lie, and that was not congruent with her values. And she said, "No, thank you," and walked out the door. And, that was it. So, people who, in any construct, in any situation, who would ask you to compromise your values. Now, when that's happening. When you're being asked to do something or say something that flies in the face of how you see the world, and pick your value. Now, there are some people who don't have a core value of honesty. Now remember, a value is something that's publicly demonstrated, something you're going to do when no one is looking. So for someone to tell, let's say let's just use the value of honesty since it's on the table. If you have a core value of honesty and somebody in any contest says, "Well, I need you to lie. I need you to tell a lie. I need you to make something, whatever it is," it's going to feel really uncomfortable. And I say to you, it's just easier. When we opened the clinic here, um, Colleen and I did that. She had had a clinical director before me that was less than ethical. And when she asked me, and I started as a volunteer, I said, "Don't ever ask me to do anything unethical. Don't ever ask me to lie. Don't ever ask me uh, overbill or do anything unethical." And we have stuck to that for 18 years because she never has, and she's scrupulously honest and scrupulously ethical, and that's the kind of person that I want to be with. And it worked out very, very well. But be wary of people who don't share your values or who don't share your idea of the way the world is supposed to work. Now, understand, I just did an evaluation of a graduate student. We're talking about biases and diversity and inclusion. It's a big hot topic right now. Cultures are very different. We see a lot of human trafficking, and I can say this here. I think it's in the public domain. I mean, there are cultures that if you got too many kids, you just sell a few. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be flippant about it, but there are cultures, third world countries, whatever, where you got a bunch of kids, somebody's willing to buy them, and they'll just sell the kids into human trafficking, that kind of stuff. I worked with a person from the Middle East who believes that he was a sex object as a child, for that he was that they people would pay at parties and that kind of thing. I don't want to get too graphic here. I want to keep this rated G, but understand that different cultures have very different values, and and by definition, think our values are the right ones. By the way, and so sometimes it causes. But if you are true to yourself and you know that you operate under a set of core values, and if you want a values clarification worksheet, I have one. So just let me know in the comments or send me an email to info@drpatrickscott.com, and I'd be happy to help you clarify your values. It's something that we do. The idea is that A value is something that is freely chosen, but you live by it, whether you know it or not. If you have a core value of loyalty, man, you hang in there a long time. If you have a core value of integrity, you show up, you do what you say you're going to do, and so on. Okay, so that's number two. Let's go to number three. Those who ask you to be less than who you are. Number three. Those who ask you to be less than who you are. Sorry about the capitalization confusion. So the catchphrase is "must you be so." I've gotten that. Must you be so? Can you tone that down a little bit? Can you chill out? Must you have so much personality? Must you always do this? Like that. And so if you have felt that you are around people, okay, I will cut to a chase here. We are full of diversity. We are full of differences in people. And anyone that's going to ask you to be something other than you are or less of who you are to make them comfortable. Now, I think you may know where I'm going with this. Right now, it's in the public eye. Now, I truly believe that we go through cycles and rhythms in humanity. It's a law of Huna that we go through cycles and rhythms, and there are hugely democratic times and hugely Republican times and hugely conservative times and hugely liberal times. It just kind of and I've been on the planet long enough to just see these things cycle through, so I'm not too concerned. But right now, according to the veterans and the active duty military and the people that I'm counseling who work for the federal government, they're telling me that there's a lot of rolling back of old policies around diversity and inclusion, and that's really causing some discomfort, and up to including what's called a witch hunt. And so, if you're trans and you're in the federal government or you're in the military, that's going to not be so comfortable right now. I don't agree with it. I don't like it, and it's happening right now. I'm seeing with the VA. I've had several patients in the last few weeks who have just been denied care. They've just been they've been their care has just been cut off, and so they've come here for care, which and I'm happy that we were able to provide care. Now, there's no reason given. It's because you're trans or because you're gay or because you're black or because you're Latino, but there are things happening in the country now that are very, very concerning. To take it to a more personal nature, anyone now, I get it. Sometimes we can be over the top. I can be over the top. I can be irreverent. I have been called on the carpet many times for being too sarcastic and too irreverent. And I try to modulate it. I try to read the room. I'm not always successful. I can sometimes overdo it. I think we all can. And that's not really what I'm talking about. I want to be acceptable. I don't want to be offensive. And anyone in your life that just your foundation. For example, I am gay and I've been gay, for a long time. I'm not even that interesting. I'm not trans. I'm just a good old fashioned garden variety gay, right? And there was a time when that was not okay. It was just simply not okay. I was told in no uncertain terms. I have been discriminated. I'm old enough to have gone through this. And I talk to younger gay people now who just haven't known. I don't want to sound like nobody knows the troubles I've seen, but 40, 50 years ago, it was not as accepted as it is now. And I was told in no uncertain terms I was not hired for a job because they suspected I might be gay. I was told when I started modeling. Actually, that's when it first happened. And I was not even so accepting of my own orientation, but there was a suspicion as I modeled for Sears catalog, and I was told by my agents in no uncertain terms, "You play it straight." And I said, "What are you talking about?" Because I wasn't even really out yet. I was in my early 20s. I didn't even really know I was gay. I just thought I liked girls. I like guys. I just that's very common, coming out process. I wasn't even out, and my agents had sat me down and had a very serious talk that when you go to the photo studio for Sears catalog, you may not ever let on that you might be gay, not even a little bit, even if you have to make up a girlfriend, even if you have to have pictures taken with women to show that you can't possibly be gay, because this is, the all American, excuse me, the all American company, and they are not going to have, gay people representing their all-American brand and so on. Now, those of you that are my age or even around my age know exactly what I'm talking about. I know some of you younger people are going, well, that's crazy. That's completely mortifying. Yes, it is. But this is the truth. So anybody that's in your sphere, family, friends, colleagues, that don't accept you for who you are, uh, maybe you don't need them in your life anymore. That kind of thing. Those who ask you to be less than who you are. And what I mean by that is they want to stifle you. Must you be so? Can you just keep a lid on that? Like that. So now that sometimes manifests as personal style. Um, you know, dress, tattoos, piercings, makeup, hair, whatever it is. Sometimes it's affectations, meaning your voice, your chosen business. Must you be so? That's just kind of my moniker for this. So that's number three. Anybody that asks you to be less than who you are, or is threatened by you, threatened by your talent, threatened by your anything, and maybe that just you don't need to be around them so much anymore. All right, let's go to number four. And feel free to stop me with any questions. Number four. Those who take your energy and resources without giving anything back. Those who take your energy and resources without giving anything back. I realized early on in my family, and remember, I was born and raised poor. We were upper middle class when my father was alive. When he died, my mom became instantly a single parent of three children in the 60s. Do the math. Not common. She had never worked really. She had had kind of fun jobs. She also was a model. She was also a singer. My dad was the breadwinner. She was the stay-at-home mom. She hadn't worked in years. And when he had passed away, I mentioned that we didn't have mortgage insurance. We were left with a lot of bills. And she did the best she could, and including we were not wealthy at all. We were lower, probably under the poverty level. Um, and Josh was saying there's a beautiful drawing of my mom on Facebook. Okay. Yes, there is. I think you did it. That's great. Um, and where was I going with this? I realized in subsequent generations, one of my karmic patterns, if you will, is because I was determined, probably unconsciously as a child, that I was going to make money. I was not going to live in poverty. I lived in poverty. I grew up in poverty. Now, I don't want to get into my ghetto is worse than your ghetto is worse than my ghetto. I have had those conversations where people look at me and they think I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth and I was always wealthy and I always had money and I always, I didn't and we didn't. I did, but the funny thing is, I didn't know we were poor until I got to college. We lived in projects. We lived in federally subsidized housing. I was born to a Depression era mentality woman who would follow me around the house and turn off the lights, and every envelope became a to-do list, and recycle everything, and super super cheap, and everything was about the money, and all that. So super duper duper about the money, and that was a good thing. And we never went without. I was working. I started working when I was 14. When I was 16, I bought a car. Well, she technically bought the car, but I paid for it. She technically signed for it, but I made the payments. You know how it goes. I was working. I was a busboy and then a waiter, and I was very industrious. And I got a car when I was 16. I think I got it before I was 16, even before I could drive it. I think I got it, but I paid for it. And I learned a way to meet my needs was to have money and to support my family. And that was a way that I met my needs. And listen carefully. This is the way I met my needs, was by being generous, by having money, by taking people out, by buying gifts, by I started working, well, at 9 with a paper route, at 12 as a babysitter, at 14 as a busboy, and so on. And I remember not knowing what to do with the money. Well, my mother could absolutely find things for me to do with the money. And I remember, I think I got my first paycheck, or I had saved a little bit of money. And I said, oh my gosh, I've got all this money. I don't know what to do. Your brother's car needs new tires. That's what we did. We went to Sears. and I bought my brother's car 4 new tires. I don't know how much it was, probably was a bloody fortune then, but, didn't know, and that's how I met my needs. Now I know this is resonating with a lot of you, where you have learned to be a giver. You're a people pleaser, you wanna help, you wanna do that kind of thing. Now that's all actually really great, and I still am very generous, I still give away a lot of money to charity, I still help people out. And then there's the flip side where you begin to feel that it's always one sided. You're doing all the giving and you're getting nothing in return. Now, it doesn't have to be tit for tat. You give 'em money, they give you money. But there needs to be some energy exchange in these relationships. It started happening with some of my friends, and I think this happens to a lot of us, that you start growing and people, your friends are getting married and they're having children. Well, parents with children don't, number one, have a lot of money and they don't have a lot of freedom. They can't just drop what they're doing and visit you. So I totally understood that. I'm thinking of some friends in college who just really got married right out of college, and that if I wanted to see them, I had to go to them, you know. And there was one friend who, I bless him, I still miss him now. I wish we could have stayed in touch, but he had 4 kids. With 4 kids, if I wanted to see him, I was going to him, because there's no way with 4 kids that he was gonna be traveling to see me, so I totally got that. There was one time, though, that I was a little hurt because, I had met the kids and I was, I love children and children love me, and so, I was visiting their town, and what he wanted me to do was babysit the kids so he and his wife could have a date, which is something a good friend would do, and I did it. But it felt kinda like, "Really? I traveled all this way, I'm staying in a hotel because there's no room in the house with 4 kids and 2 parents and a dog and a cat. So I'm staying in a hotel, I'm paying for my way to go there, I'm buying the kids gifts. I love the kids love me, and rather than spend time with me, he wanted to spend time with his wife and leave me with the kids, which is fine. Totally fine. I mean, it really was, but then I was thinking, "Oh, man." And I got it. I didn't have kids at the time. I wasn't married at the time. I certainly had the time, I had the money, I had the freedom, I had everything that he wanted, and rather than spend time with me, he'd rather spend more time with his wife, which is totally okay. So, like that. Maybe not a good example, but I want you to look at your relationships and where you feel like, number one, you're either more committed to their success than they are, you're more invested in the relationship than they are. The only time that they reach out to you, and this happened subsequently with other relationships in my family, was I was the wallet, and my only role was the wallet. Meaning unless I was paying for something, there was not a whole lot of interest. There was not, I mean, never mind, I would have to go there, I would have to fly there, I would have to go there, go out of my way, make sure that I paid for everything while I was there, and then on top of it, "Oh, yeah, by the way, can you lend me some money, or can you give me some money, or can you help us out in some way?" And I did that for a good many years, and then I started to resent it, that it appeared to be my only role was money, and when I would want to spend actual time sharing or talking or whatever, I didn't get that. I really didn't get that, and so there's about a half a dozen scenarios in my family where I would not hear from a family member for many, many years, and then all of a sudden there'd be a crisis. They would only reach out for money, and I just kind of was like, okay, well, no, sorry. I have more value than that. So take a look at your relationships. Take a look at what your role in the relationship is. Now, I get it. They don't have to be tit for tat. They don't have doesn't have to be equal. But I want you to look at your level of resentment. If you are having resentment about any of these relationships where you feel like you do all the giving, they do all the taking. Now, I'm not talking about children, although my mom reminded us how much she did for us every day, you know. And that was totally okay, because she did. Well, my mom was older. She was 48 when I was born. And so by the time she passed away, one of I'm going to call it her fixed delusional system. This was that I owed her millions of dollars. I think the week before she died, it was a week before Mother's Day. She died the Thursday after Mother's Day. And I was living in Europe, and I think the last conversation was how much money I owed her. Now, I didn't owe her any money. She never lent me any money. But her point of view was my whole life was, she created my whole life, and that there was never going to be enough money. I never really understood what she did with the money because she really lived. very simply, but she never seemed to have enough money. And no matter how much I gave her, it was never going to be enough. So anyway, take a look at those relationships. If you are doing all the giving, they are doing all the taking, you have any sort of resentment about it, take a look at that and make some new decisions about those relationships. All right. Number 5, those who tell you to keep quiet when you know you should speak up. Number 5, those who tell you to keep quiet when you know you should speak up. This gets back to the must you be so. If you have a truth to tell, you know you should be telling it, and you have people telling you to zip it. Now, again, we're not talking about getting into dangerous situations here, but you should be allowed and be supported by your friends and family and people close to you to speak your truth, whatever that is. Um, and I don't want to keep bringing it back to the diversity and inclusion conversation, but that's something that's relevant to me. Um, there was a point at which in my life that I was not willing to lie anymore about who I was. And I don't remember actually when it was. Um, there was a point, and that cost me dearly. I've told you some of the stories. One story, the most recent story, was right at the dawn of COVID in February of 2020, I think. And I was teaching a class on diversity for a major multinational corporation. And my point of view and what's taught in the psychotherapy and social work literature is that all humans have diversity. I don't care what your color is, I don't care what your gender is. We all have elements to ourselves that are diverse. Some of us have unseen handicaps and unseen challenges. And so the point of view from a diversity and inclusion point of view is that acknowledge the differences in all humans and accept and embrace, our diversity, that we are all have uniqueness about us. So that's the point of view. And so I was teaching this group of about 25 leaders in this organization, global communications, about diversity. And I said, let's start with, and I said that, we're going to do some exercises today. And I would like us to start with the idea that diversity isn't just about skin color at all. And so we're going to look at all the permutations of how different we actually are. And then what is amazing is that as different as we are as humans, we're all actually the same. There's so many similarities that we share this human species thing that we all have to go through, right? And so all I said was, I want to go around the room by way of introduction, and I want us to start with an element of diversity that your coworker wouldn't know about you. It could be ethnic, it could be religious, it could be cultural, it could be food, it could be, something like that. And I said, and it would be, but please pick something that your coworkers, because I wanted to do a team building bonding session with this group. And I said, so just, pick something that's safe that you can do. And I said, and I'll start, so nobody has to start. I'm married to a man. Okay, go. That was it. That's all I said. I didn't get into the gay thing. I didn't get into the, nothing. Well, I got 24 really good evaluations, and I got one evaluation that was really bad. It was all zeros with red ink. That the guy just thought that was the most unprofessional thing in the world, that I would open a class coming out, and that was, against his religion and against his values, and that how I should never be allowed in the building again, and people like me should burn in hell, and so on. And that happens. Now, I don't regret it. I've never been back to that organization. I don't want to go back. In fact, I quit the consulting job with the healthcare organization, because they called me and they wanted to know about what did you say that was so disturbing to that one participant, and it felt a bit like a witch hunt. So I was like, okay, I don't need to do that. I don't need that anymore. I'm at a point in my career. I'm at a point in my life where I get to speak my truth. I'm not that flamboyant. I just kind of am who I am. And so pay attention to those that would want you to keep quiet about who you are, or keep quiet about injustices, or look the other way, that kind of stuff, that guilt by there's a Catholic term, there's the sin of omission, sin of contrition. I don't know. So when somebody's asking you to look the other way while they do some nasty shit, I would not agree with that. Be all of who you are, and don't let somebody bully you into not being who you are and not speaking up and speaking your truth. Okay, number 6. We're almost done here. Those who would ask you to betray yourself for their approval. So this is, I think it's number 6. Yeah. Those who ask you to betray yourself for their approval. Um, this happens in families. I hear stories where you have to sell yourself out, sell yourself. Um, and there's scales to this. So the betraying yourself, I think a lot of us have done things for money, before that we needed, to do. And I'm not even being that dramatic about it. My first choice was not to be a busboy or, I, and people are so funny. It's like, how did you choose these careers? Well, you need some money. You need to make a living, you know? And I talk to a lot of people now who are changing careers. They're becoming psychotherapists, they're becoming coaches. And there is a thing that happens when you're moving from one career to the next where you just really don't want to do this one career, but it pays the bills. And there's something to be said for being able to pay the bills. And so my thing about don't quit your day job is, people ask me how long did it take to me to move from sommelier in a restaurant to psychotherapist and that salary. So I'm in a fancy LA restaurant. I'm a waiter, a manager, a sommelier, whatever, and I'm making a certain salary at that level. And let's just say it was $100,000. So then I go to graduate school and I make, I don't know, 30 or 25 or something. I go to, making nothing and sell my fancy car, move out of my fancy house, and then move to Long Beach and blah, blah, blah. Well, it took about 10 years. And I'm not trying to discourage you. Please follow your dreams, but understand that, there's a reality out there called rent and mortgage and car payment and food. And, I want you to follow your dreams to understand that many of us do things that we wouldn't choose if money were no object. And I'm not even talking about compromising your integrity or anything else. A lot of people who are desperate do a lot of desperate things, and so I'm not going to get into a whole drug, sex, and rock and roll kind of a conversation. But understand you may have people in your life who demand that you compromise yourself for them, for their approval. If I would have gone into um, medicine, well, that's not true. That was my desire. I think it happens in families, those authoritative families, the parents, where they want you to be a doctor, they want you to be a lawyer, they want you to be an engineer. They've decided what your career path is. They want you to tell you who you're going to marry and who you're not going to marry. They want you to marry within your faith, culture, color, whatever it is, and you have some different idea, and it gets very dicey. And again, I am not. An interesting story of a young man. This was a really interesting story. It's coming up, so I have to tell it. I was teaching a course in Santa Barbara, California, a number of years ago, and it was called the Choice Course. And it has to do with the basic needs that I've talked about in terms of William Glasser and Abraham Maslow about we all have to choose behaviors to meet our own needs, and we are responsible for meeting our needs. Nobody else can meet our needs for us. And this young man who was in his late 20s, I can tell you he worked for Procter and Gamble, which was one of my clients. And he was from India. And he had lived in America. He had gone to a major Big Ten university and had met a young woman there, and that they were dating and engaged. And he brought her to India to meet his family of origin, and it didn't go well. He was Indian, and I don't remember the details in terms of the language of it, but he was a dark-skinned young man, and she was a very white, Midwestern, blonde, blue-eyed, beautiful woman. And he brought her home to meet the parents, and it didn't go well. Not that they were rude or disrespectful to the young lady. They were very nice to her, but as soon as they left, he got word from his family of origin that he needed to break up with her because they had arranged a marriage for him already without his knowledge and or consent. Now, this is the culture, and for those of you that know about East India, this is common. This still happens today, although less, but it's still. I mean, I hear from my Indian friends that this still is a thing. That arranged marriages still happen, and that marriage is not about love. It's about resources. It's about families. And it is the families of origin that decide and pay, by the way, for these elaborate Indian weddings. And I'm not going to get into that whole cultural thing, but you can certainly look up arranged marriages in India, still a thing. And he wanted to use the course called the choice course to make the decision as to whether he uh, breaks up with the woman, his fiance, and goes through with the arranged marriage in India, or he defies his family of origin and marries the woman from the Midwest. I'm going to pause for effect here. After it was all said and done, he decided to go with the arranged marriage in India. And there were about 20 people in the class, and we were all shocked. Shocked. This would not be our choice. This would not be the thing that any of us would have done. The woman was not in the class. His fiance was not taking the class. It was he, and it was even though he worked at Procter and Gamble. So, long story short, I did corporate training, a lot of different corporations. Then we would have these community-based classes that people could sign up for, and all of our different clients, and they were open to the community. So this was one of those classes that was open to the community. He from Procter and Gamble came, but other clients would come, and they would come to do their own work. Not so much corporate work, but their own human development progress work. And he decided to go through with the arranged marriage. And I had been to Procter and Gamble a number of times after that in Cincinnati, where he worked, and he debriefed it with me because I was his coach, and he said that it was a tough decision, but that I had to look at my own values, and my value for family superseded my value for loyalty or something like that. And it was very painful, very, very painful. And I haven't heard from him for a few years, but he did do the arranged marriage, and it was successful, even though it maybe flew in the face of what we in the West would do. It was congruent with his culture and his religion and his family, and it was what his family wanted. And as they say, blood is thicker than water. Still not sure how I feel about that. But please, those who ask you to betray yourself for their approval, watch out for them. Okay, almost done here. Last one, number 7. Number 7 is those who ask you to forget your worth. Those who ask you to forget your worth. This is tough. We are not objective about ourselves. We don't see ourselves as others see us. I've been through a number of employees in the last few years, and it was about worth. And then I'm sorry, it was. They believe I didn't see their worth. I don't believe I saw their worth. Big discrepancy. For better or worse, I was in charge. It was my business. I needed to see more than I was seeing, and the relationships ended because I did not see their worth. So this is very personal to me because I have certain standards, and I'm told by my people all the time, for better or worse, I'm in a position where I do all the hiring and all the training and all the coaching and all the mentoring and all the paying and all the stuff. And I have certain standards about what I expect. And I'm seeing, and this is a generational thing, there is an influencer culture out there, and young people are exposed to YouTube. Here I am on YouTube thinking that I really should. Okay, here we go. I happen to know of an influencer who is on a particular adult site. I'm not going to name it. And this young man, I know for reasons I can't say, no, I can't say, you probably can figure it out, came to me for help. He was, well, I'm just going to tell you the story, and we got 7 minutes. He wanted to be an adult performer, but not really a performer. So, with the whole webcam thing, that a lot of young people are putting themselves on OnlyFans and Grinder and other kinds of platforms, and they get money for just showing themselves. Sorry, I don't know what else to call it, and doing certain things. And I've had teenagers under the age of 18 here at the clinic where the parents discover the webcam and discover all the paraphernalia in the closet and all the costumes and bring the kids to therapy going, gee, 14-year-old girl, what's this? And meanwhile, the 14-year-old girl has a whole little business going and has got a PayPal account and is making bucks. And the reason why it became they figured it out was that the young lady has all of a sudden got clothes and shoes and purses and is ordering things on Amazon, and it's coming to the house and the parents are going, where are you getting this money? Anyway, you know the drill. So this young man, a 17-year-old, comes to me and says, I'm really at odds with my parents. I want to do this stuff. I realize I really can't do it till I'm 18. But man, the day I turn 18, I want to come out. I want to come out as bisexual. I want to come out with a webcam. I want to make money. Now I've stayed in touch with this guy. It's only a year later. His first month, I'm just going to put this out there. He made $50,000 in his first month just showing his stuff online. I'm just saying, I have no judgment. I'd love to be, no, I'm not even going to go there. With that as a role model, all I need to do is show my online and make 50 grand a month. What does that do to other people who maybe don't look as good as this kid does, who think they should make 50,000 a month? And what I was getting from some of my younger people, my millennial and Gen Z workers, was they wanted big bucks. I mean, big, big bucks. And they were not willing to really do what it would take to make the business make enough money to pay them those big bucks. And yet and I'm going to say I've followed because I'm still in a relationship with this young man. I mean, a professional relationship, therapeutically. He makes millions of dollars a year doing that, and there's no real. It's not really even that racy. It's not porn. It's not hardcore. It's just this influencer. Hey, look at me. I'm here. I am with my shirt off at the pool, and here I am with the ladies at the whatever it is. And so when we have our youth looking online and realizing that, gee, I just have to have the right break and I have to have the right shtick and I have to have the right thing, I can make $100,000 a month or $50,000 a month. That skews what work ethic looks like. And so I'm seeing a generation or two now of young people who just don't really obviously the 9 to 5 is never going to happen, and obviously showing up to a physical location is not going to happen. A dress code is not going to happen. And I even have people here in Las Vegas who come to me to work for Heads Up, and they want to work 5 hours a week, telehealth only. Meaning they don't want to actually have to come in. They want to work 5 hours, and then they expect a lot of money for that. So what I'm this whole number 7 about those that forget your worth, understand that. I know, Joshua, you are that pretty. Um, Understand that and my mother, God bless her, I appreciate her so much more now. She always told me that no one is going to know your worth until you do. And I'm going to say that again. No one is going to value you or know your worth until you do. And I have been accused of being arrogant and being overconfident, and I have been overconfident. And I think sometimes I have been accused by many careers, by many leaders, by many mentors that one thing about Patrick is he can fake it until he makes it. And that has served me well. Sometimes my ego has been in front of my competency. I'm just going to put that out there. I don't have any regrets about it, but yeah, I've been accused of being kind of egotistical and self-absorbed and maybe over dramatizing not my accomplishments, but my abilities. Because the truth is, I've been in so many different careers and so many different situations that I probably can fake it until I make it, and then I'll figure it out. I know a person who's on this. This is very funny. I'm going to call Josh out, and then we'll conclude. So know your worth. Don't let anybody talk you down about your worth. So Joshua, so many of you know about the MER study. It's old now, 2010, We started collecting data. I happened to know Josh, and I said, "Ever done statistics? Do you feel like you could maybe take a shot at doing the statistics for my dissertation?" And he said, with all the confidence in the world, "Absolutely, I can do that." Now, what I found out later was he'd never done statistics. He didn't know anything. He didn't know shit, but he figured it out, and he did beautifully because he thought, "How hard can it be? It's been done before. I have resources," and he figured it out. And he did on that magnificent MER study that was presented to 10,000 psychiatrists that had 1,000 participants here at Heads Up that was, noted and blah blah blah. Joshua Hayduk, right here on my who works for me now. He faked it till he made it, and he did it very very well. And if you take a look at the website, he just figures that shit out. And so he knows his worth. I know his worth, and we continue to talk about that. So never let anybody else sell you short. So I think that's enough for today. I so appreciate you. I hope that was helpful, and we'll see you next week.